what I've heard recently as well about people that was actually at 9/11 now living but actually dying because they got cancer, and there's so many people actually with cancers since it. So I think it's connected somehow. I don't know. Is that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about that very much, but I think one of the things which I've thought for a long time, and it's again the same thing because I haven't definitely made the connection, but it's kind of an obvious one, is the dust. Because this dust, even if it was, I mean, we think, for example, the dust was energized in some way. It was, and you can particularly see that when this dust cloud rolls out from the World Trade Center and it goes towards this parking lot, and then the cars all basically, you know, start burning.
Yeah.
So it appears that dust cloud was somehow energized, possibly with some type of not electrical charge. It's not like that, but it's not exactly that. But it's like an electrical charge. If you're inhaling that dust, it's got aluminium, it's got steel, it's got filing cabinets, it's got porcelain. Apparently that dust, I've read somewhere, had a pH of 14, which is near the top end of the alkaline scale. It's about as alkaline as you can get. If you get some of that inside either you swallow it or you inhale it, that's going to potentially create some serious effects in your body. And we all know that the EPA, I say we all know, if you go and read the documents and the announcements, the EPA, which was the Environmental Protection Agency, they pronounced the air was safe, I think like 24 hours after or something, I can't remember. So I think that there are two possible factors, at least two possible factors. One is that they'd inhaled the dust, and that would have certain toxic effects in their body which could create cancers. The other is the residual energy from the material around them, and we don't know if, for example, they were continuing to somehow send energy to the site to make sure it didn't all, you know, completely go up or something. They may have been dampening it down with some energy or something. So there may have been other effects on people that were there from energy and not just dust. But that whole environment was a fairly toxic environment. So anybody that was in there or lived near there and wasn't suitably protected, they would. I'm not surprised that they would get cancer. There were other answers.
There's also about, for me as well, I mean, Building 7, World Trade Center 7, I mean, that was making good for my, you know, that woke me up saying, like, how can that just went down like that? And then I heard about things like Larry Silverstein, whatever his name is, saying pull it. So he actually allowed it to go down.
There's a lot surrounding him.
Well, that's an interesting statement, actually, because this is something that Dr. Wood talked about. And if we think Larry Silverstein, I would be fairly sure, knew that something was going to crack off on 9/11.
Yeah. Just the actions before.
Because he wasn't there on that day.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah, and they acquired
the insurance policy before.
Of course, Two places did it as well.
You know, a question I would ask myself, and ask myself, is: did Larry Silverstein know that they were going to use the directed energy weapon to destroy the World Trade Center?
Yeah.
I would suggest he probably didn't know that. But he was then, if you look at it this way, and this is where it gets back to the perception management, if he was given a script, say, look Larry, you know, you get all your money and everything and all of that, but we'd like you to say on this documentary that the building was pulled by the fire department because, they might have even told him that that's what they said. He might have just been reporting what he thought was true because somebody told him. And when that statement went out into that documentary, that then perception managed the conspiracy movement, if you will, or the conspiracy-minded people say, that means pull it means controlled demolition. That means they pulled Building 7. That means there were bombs in it. That means controlled demolition.
Yeah, I see.
So it's an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah.
So that and Architects and Engineers Group, this group which takes in has had $1 million of funding, over $1 million of funding, probably 3 or 4 times that amount, which has come from somewhere. The Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth claim to be wanting the truth about 9/11.
Yeah.
They've used that building, so they've had whole campaigns based on Building 7 having bombs in it. That's not true. You know, it's not what happened. So it was a thread of perception management which was started by Larry Silverstein or whoever gave him the script, as it were, and that's helped maintain the cover-up for 16 years. So it was a very successful bit of perception management. And so I don't know how much Silverstein knew.
He didn't really need to know, I suppose,
No,
in a way.
no.
So they could have not
No.
told him it wasn't.
Yeah,
As long as he's got his money.
This is it.
Yeah.
That's all he's bothered about.
Yeah.
You know? And there are many like that. There are a number of other people like that. And this is another thing which I think people should consider, that what happened on 9/11 is not just about money, it's not just about politics, it's about something else. There's something else going on at a deeper level as well. And I've mentioned this on a few interviews, not perhaps pertinent to mention it now. It does seem to tie into some type of occultist belief system, which whatever you think of it, doesn't really matter, because the people that run the planet, the groups that run the planet, do seem to believe in this. For example, if you looked at the towers as you went towards New York City, what did they look like on the horizon? They looked like a number 11. What happened on what date did it happen on the 11th? How many floors did each tower have? 110 or 111 if you count the top floor. What was opposite the World Trade Center? I was there in September, end of August. Millennium Hotel. Millennium Hotel is opposite the World Trade Center. It's still there now.
Right.
What does it look like? It's actually styled. The whole Millennium Hotel opposite the World Trade Center is styled based on the monolith from the 2001 film, which is what it says on their website. If you go to their own website. And what was 2001? It was the first year of the new millennium. It wasn't 2000. It was 2001. So you've got the Millennium Hotel, 2001, 9/11, destruction of the World Trade Center. Something cracking off there, folks. So doesn't that?
I do get that, because there's a lot of things when you look at. I hate to use the term conspiracy thing, but there's a lot of these kind of symbolism and that's in it that can't all just be coincidence.
No,
it can't be.
Can't be. No,
there's something deeper, like you said. There's something deeper to it.
I say it doesn't really matter, because what I told you is all facts. Now people can regard that as a coincidence. That's fine. Maybe it is a coincidence. I don't think it is. Based on other stuff that I've read. The people that are in charge of running things, they have an occult belief system where they believe. And maybe it's even true, maybe it's something to do with the way the ether works. And I read a book by Peter Plechter called God's, I don't like the title, it's called God's Secret Formula, where he talks about prime numbers, and 9's not a prime number, 11's a prime number, and he talks about how it relates to the underlying structure of the universe. It's quite an interesting book. So I wonder if this occult belief system has some type of connection to their knowledge of how our physical reality is structured, not just with atoms and protons and neutrons and things. There's other factors to it, which is what I've come to wonder. And I think that's what perhaps if you're a top level Freemason, this is what is revealed in some of their secret knowledge. I think that's what it's part and parcel of that.
I think there's just tapped into something definite there. I'd go with that. I would definitely go with that.
But it's something that's quite nebulous. So you've got to be able to just kind of say, well, I think I've learned this about it, but I'm just going to leave it there for now and see what I can learn about it later when I come across other things to see things about. And that's what this whole process is. I think it's helpful if you have a way of structuring your own knowledge, and it is about learning and discovering and remaining open-minded, but not so open-minded that your brains fall out. Which is what happens to some people. I mean, one of the huge problems that's come up recently is this whole business with this flat Earth nonsense. I mean, that's been a huge problem. I've had loads of people write to me about that, and I've certain people that have. Like Michael Tullinger, for example, he's been fooled by it, and he's a good researcher. He's
a lot of things I've
I like Michael Tullinger's.
I've never looked into flat Earth.
I'm not bothered about it as much.
Don't look at it because it's irrelevant. It's a CIA psychological operation, and it's worked. It's worked. It's been amazingly successful. So.
And it's dividing people, isn't it? That's the whole point of that they're trying to do. Black, white, beliefs and cultures, whatever.
And it's a distraction.
And I've shown on my website with that particular thing, Flat Earth thing, I've been directly targeted to try and get that attached to me. And I've essentially proved that in articles on my website. So people that can go and read it if they want and find out about that.
I'm kind of get track now. Go back to Stephen Greer.
That's fine, yeah.
I just want to know if you still support his disclosure project. Do you still support that? Is it just other elements of what he did?
I'll tell you about Stephen Greer. So yeah, the disclosure project that he did, I think, was really important.
Yeah.
And I think the probably I'd say well over half of the witnesses, if not 3/4, were genuine witnesses. I think what they told him was true. And some of it's corroborated by people who weren't in the disclosure project. Just to give a quick example, the Roswell crash, I think that really happened. People should watch Paul David's TV movie from 1994, which I think is a very accurate account of the events, what happened before, during and after. Really do watch that film. It's about 90 minutes. It's a great film. Paul David's, and it's just called Roswell. It's a 1994 TV movie. Because some of the Greer's witnesses spoke about elements of Roswell. And the thing that I thought was big for me with Greer's disclosure project, was the connection between the energy issue and the flying saucer issue, UFO issue, whatever you want to call it. So he basically said, okay, so these things are coming here. A few of them have crashed. The military have got them. And these things don't run on gas. They don't run on coal. They don't run on petrol. They don't run on solar panels, like photovoltaic panels. So what do they run on?
This is an alien reproduction vehicle, and just to be clear, this means that it is based on advanced anti-gravity and zero-point energy propulsion system. I will tell you, and we can prove this with other scientists who are ready to come forward, that we already have a complete replacement for any fossil fuels or ionizing nuclear power plants. We don't need them. We haven't needed them. Probably have not needed them since the time I was born.
And again, when you listen to some of the accounts, people like Bill Houhouse, even Bob Lazar, I've got some problems with this story. Bob Lazar wasn't in the disclosure project, but they essentially start describing something which is engineering the underlying ether, which is like what I was talking about on 9/11. So Greer starts these energy initiatives. He starts this energy initiative called SEAS Power, SEAS Power, which he calls Space Energy Access Systems Power. And I found out about this in 2003 and I went on his website. Oh yeah, get some investors, get some inventors, get them together. You want to build this self-running magnetic motor. You've got a prototype. It's going to cost you $50,000 to get it into production. Let's get an investor to you, and you get it built. Fantastic idea, like brilliant, great. Send him some money, and I did. I sent him money. Fantastic. So then, I was doing that for 2, 3, 4 years. Comes 2007, I think it was, and then Stephen Greer launches this new website. It's called Aero 2012, and he's saying, "I want to get inventors and investors to create free energy devices." I'm thinking, I learned that somewhere before. Oh yeah, SEAS Power. So I go back. And the SEAS Power, and I put this in my presentation, SEAS Power and Aero 2012, exactly the same website. It's exactly the same. 6 years later, there's no discussion of any devices that he's got onto the market, or no pictures, no video. All there is, it's exactly the same website. If you're an inventor, send us, sign this agreement. We'll come and see you. Blah blah. It's exactly the same. All he's done is change the colour scheme, he's changed the logo. Then what happens? It's another 3 or 4 years of that, and he comes up with this Orion project. Steve Greer's Orion project. Go on there. Oh, we want to build a lab to develop free energy devices, and it's going to cost $3 million. Can you send us some money? And he has all this team of directors and stuff. And I'm looking for where's this device? Where's the video? Where's some pictures of the devices that you've been working on? Nothing. There's nothing. And then 2 years later, 2012 or 2013. Oh, we've now got this Sirius film that comes out. The Sirius film. Oh, and he's found this little alien body, a little thing about 6 inches high, Atacama alien, and tested by Dr. Gary Nolan. And then it's basically, I watched this film, and it's just a repackaging of the Disclosure Project witness testimony. With it, and they've got that, and then they've got Greer going around doing lectures and talking to audiences and saying that he's got a dead man's trigger and all this. And that's the whole film. And he's selling it on Amazon, he's selling it on Netflix, selling it on DVD for $20, and he has a premiere and blah. And then he comes out with Serious Disclosure Technologies, which is an initiative to get inventors and investors to build free energy devices. And I'm thinking, so how many times are you going to milk this cow then?
So you're thinking his attentions are elsewhere a little bit? Yes. Yeah.
And he has now admitted that, because
okay.
in April this year, he said he'd had protection from the CIA. He actually admits this in an interview. He said that he was being threatened in 1997, and 3 of his team, which was Sherry Damiak and there was another one, were killed. He said, he described in this interview, the 3 of them were assassinated. And the CIA has his meeting with this guy and he says, "Oh, do you want protection?" And he says, "What do you mean protection?" He says, "Well, we can protect you because we want to get this information out there and you're on the outside. But we want to give you protection." And he said, "Oh, yeah, okay then, right, thanks." So he actually admits that, essentially, doesn't say it in quite these words, but he admits in that interview he's working for the CIA. He's working for the CIA. Now, he was asked a direct question by a chap that I know who lives in Philadelphia. Greer did a talk in Philadelphia in 2015. And this chap, he asked him a direct question, because Greer referenced 9/11, and he asked him a direct question about how the towers were destroyed. He says, because Greer brought up something in his lecture about directed energy weapons or something. So this chap in the audience said, in the question and answer, there's compelling evidence that directed energy weapons used to destroy the World Trade Center. And he said, "Oh yeah, well I've known about that since it happened, what you just said, but I've got bigger fish to fry than 9/11."
Yes, sir.
There's compelling evidence that not just the towers, but the entire World Trade Center complex was destroyed by perhaps a directed energy type of weapon, something that was operated under technology of molecular dissociation. That seems to be very much related to what we're talking about. Have you looked at that?
I have looked at it. You know, I have bigger fish to fry. 9/11 was terrible. We lost 3,000 people. It led to 2 huge wars and trillions of dollars.
Right.
And he says, what's coming is going to make 9/11 look like a picnic. And he doesn't talk about what he knows about energy weapons. He talks about this guy called Richard Foch. He just name drops again. This is another thing that Greer does. He name drops a lot. Says that he knows all these people in the government, and stuff. And there's a particular one that he references, James Woolsey, who's a former Clinton advisor, or I forget, Woolsey was a deputy director of the CIA or something like that. But James Woolsey and Greer were at this dinner, and Greer claims that he briefed Woolsey on all the UFO stuff, but then Woolsey put out a statement a couple of years later. It's all on the web if you go and look for it. Greer's events, portrayal of events is not really accurate. It's not what Woolsey denies, that he was ever briefed by Greer on this. Greer had been going around saying this for years, that he briefed the CIA director. So there's definitely something very, very suspect about Greer, and you can say that since 2001, doing that disclosure project, he basically hasn't done anything. I mean, he hasn't
really done anything up until then, pretty much.
I think so. Yeah. I think basically somehow he built up the momentum of the disclosure project, and they let him do it. They would rather he hadn't done it. Somehow he got away with doing that, but he made an agreement at that point with them. And I mean, David Icke told me when I met David Icke in 2008, had a 2.5 hour long conversation with him. Greer himself admits that he had cancer in 1997, and this is when Sherry Damiak died. Yeah. And David Icke told me that Stephen Greer was given a little vial of liquid to cure his cancer, and he, instead of immediately taking it, he went and got it tested to see what was in it. So that's what David Icke told me. So that's what I think they made a deal with Greer in 1997. So as far as I'm concerned, if he doesn't work for the CIA, which he more or less admits he does, but if I've got that wrong and misinterpreted that and he doesn't, he might as well do. Yeah. Because anyone like Greer,
if he's being protected, then that says everything. He's admitted to it.
Yeah,
so.
Pretty much. I mean, you could go and watch it. So I might put it on my website. I've done an article about it. I mean, I talked about Honforth actually. I mentioned it briefly. I put a lot in that talk. That was really a 2-hour talk that I did there, and tried to cram it to 70 minutes, and it didn't work.
We noticed that, yeah. But I mean, it was a really interesting talk.
It was.
I mean,
it was brilliant talk.
I could have listened to that a lot longer,
Yeah.
you know, because you really break into stuff, you know,
Yeah.
that I was kind of not heard of. That was where I first heard about Hutchinson effect and all that. And this is where I thought, oh, I need to know about that.
A prime example of that was what we were talking about earlier on, happened at Honforth. For example, you might remember that after I did my talk, one of the people that asked a question about my 9/11 statements, Robert Jacobs.
Rob Jacob, yeah.
Okay.
Bob Jacobs.
Yeah.
Well, I should keep going. But yeah, he's.
Well, who said that? It's strange.
He said, what this thing about 9/11 being a hoax? I've never heard of that before.
We couldn't understand that. Yeah, confusing.
You know, and 2 years ago, I spoke to Stanton Friedman. I actually sat next to him at the evening meal, and either the first or the second day, I gave him a copy of Where Did the Towers Go to Stanton Friedman, the nuclear physicist. And I can tell you this, that I wrote to him in probably July, something like that. And I said to him, Stanton, have you read the Where Did the Towers Go book? What did you think of it? You know, no response. So then about a couple of weeks after that, I wrote to him about this story that had come out about this mummified alien, this thing that had come out in end of June. I said, what do you think of this mummified alien, Stanton? And he replied within about 2 hours saying, oh, I need more data. So make of that what you will.
Yeah.
But Stanton Friedman has been heard to talk about thermite and mini nukes, I think. On
that camp.
I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah.
So this again is all part of, to me, as I see things, of the perception management. If you can steer certain researchers who a lot of people listen to, then you, in most ways, will steer their listeners as well. And a lot of those leading lights, like Stanton Friedman, he has been doing this stuff for 40 years, I think, since the 70s, 40 years, probably longer. If people like him, I mean, his talks haven't really changed for the last 30 years. He hasn't integrated any new material. He talks about MJ12, Betty and Barney Hill case, and the star map and that sort of thing, and some of the documents. He looks at the documents, which is good, and he's done some great analyses of those things if you read them. I found his MJ12 document analysis very compelling, but he hasn't gone on from there. He doesn't like, he hasn't really talked about. In fact, he wrote to me years ago saying he thought it was a mistake to link the UFO issue to the energy issue. I'm thinking, well, really? He actually said that in an email. I'd have to dig that out sometime. And I don't like saying this because I like, for example, I like Stanton Friedman. He's got a nice sense of humour. He's quite generous. He's generous with his time. He's sent me stuff in the past for nothing. I wrote to him in 2005 and he sent me a whole envelope of stuff. It probably cost him $10, $20 and he didn't ask for any money. And I admire people like that who are willing to do that. But yet he will not. When I gave him this book, he didn't say, "Oh man, we'll read this. It looks really interesting." Nothing, no feedback, nothing.
And do you get that a lot? I mean, do you find that happening a lot with when you're pushing this information to people in, like what you say, the truth movement?
A lot of people just don't seem to be able to. I think something of it, and I've said this to other people, it depends on people's level of consciousness. There is something going on. And maybe you'll agree, I think from our earlier conversations, it appears that for some people they are meant to become ready to learn certain things at certain times in their lives. You become ready to learn that and take that on board. At other times in your life, you're not. So however much people show it to you or try and argue that you should look at this information, even if you did, it would be meaningless. It just it just would have no meaning for you for whatever reason, for various reasons. But after you've gone through certain events, maybe, or certain points of looking at things, you can then absorb that information. It's not like ordinary learning. I'm not really talking about that. It's not like, for example, if you go and go into primary school, you can't do A-level maths as soon as you go into first year of secondary school or primary school level. You've got, no, it's not quite like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's some of that. You've got to learn certain things, but there's something where you've got to develop spiritually to be ready to integrate that information into your understanding of the universe. And I think some people never get to that point. And there's a certain point where you begin to, I think it's where you take responsibility for your own thinking. Yeah. There's a certain point where you realise that that's what you've done, and it's maybe not one particular day or event or time or whatever. It's just something, a gradual process. Oh, now I've broken free of all the BS. You know, I don't need that BS anymore. I can I'm on my own. I can look around. I can evaluate. I can think for myself, and think: is that true? Is this person sincere? Am I being led down the gut? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I'll go with that for now and come back to it when I've, worked it out a bit more. And you become an truly independent thinker, and that's very dangerous to the powers that be, because you then basically, it doesn't matter what they do to you, you're free. You have this liberated thinking. The truth will set you free, and all of that. The old cliche.
Absolutely.
And when you get to that point, hopefully you haven't got any heroes anymore. You like people, you can admire people, they're not exactly heroes as such, and you try not to, well, I'm speaking for myself now, I try not to have any expectations of anybody. In other words, just because they say done really good research on this,
and they're popular in the field and all that.
Right. I now no longer expect them to start talking about 9/11 because it may be that they haven't got to that point in their consciousness to be able to do that for whatever reason. It's not in their life plan, and it's not like me saying, "Oh, I know more than you." It's not quite like that. Although sometimes that does apply, because I can come across as being quite arrogant because I say that I know stuff, that other people don't know. And it can come across sounding quite arrogant, but it's not. It's true. I do know stuff that other people don't know. And then it boils down to whether that person wants to know what I know, or whether they don't want to know what I know. And I can't force them to want to know something. They've got to want to know it for themselves. And there's another good analogy I thought. It's an old expression, but I recently thought of this. I think I read something in an email the other day. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But there's a little adage to that, which I think is important. The horse must be thirsty. And you can't make the horse thirsty. It either is or it isn't. Because as perhaps you guys have found, and I found this too, most horses you go up to, you grab and say, "Come get some water," and they'll just bolt it off in the opposite direction. They'll just run away from you. You can't even grab the reins. They're off.
I feel that people who do know a certain amount of truth then almost become imprisoned of what they know and don't allow anything else in. They get to the point where I know this is the truth, and any new information, because it may challenge what they already know, they disregard it or they don't look into it.
The walls are up.
So I mean, I say to them, look, you was open-minded enough to get this far. Why are you closed down?
This is a really tough one when somebody will open up about a UFO encounter or a near-death experience or something, and that I think has been particularly galling for me. Where I think, to me, the way I'm looking at it, people that have near-death experiences they should see that this is what we live in is kind of an illusion, really.
Which you did.
I do see it. It is.
They can't then look at the other stuff and go with it, because in other words, when you have something like it, it's so profound, and it's so profound when that happens to you that it should crack open everything. But even that doesn't always work for people. I heard this guy called I'm trying to think of his name. He's had about 7 near-death experiences. What's his name? I remember his name.
Poor guy.
It's
maybe more dead than alive.
Exactly. Well, he claims to have been anyway. He was going on about, I don't know, he was going on about 9/11 and terrorism or something. He didn't seem to realise it was all an illusion, What was his name? Daniel, was it Daniel Brinkley? I think it was Daniel Brinkley was his name. and it's a lovely sounding
Did
guy.
you describe what his near-death experience was?
Yeah, he did. It's a while ago since I listened, a few years ago since I listened. Danyan, not Daniel, Danyan Brinkley, I think is his name. And I was thinking, why don't you know? Why don't you know this stuff? Why don't you understand this?
Yeah.
So you do get frustrated, and like you said, you talk to people. You've seen this, you understand. Why can't you? Why can't you look at this? Why?
Yeah.
And it's just that, like I say, they're not ready.
I think there's a bit of conditioning as well.
There is.
We've already got that conditioning anyway from outside.
And this works, and it's not, again, it's not just the problem with 24/7 news and constant on the hour of it. Yeah. There's something else going on.
There is, yeah.
And I always suggest to people to think about, one thing to think about is, once you look at 9/11 and you see what technology, what it can do, even though we don't know exactly what it is, we know that it was done. What technologies have they got to affect the way that people think?
Exactly.
And I'm not just talking about TV, I'm talking about influencing the brain remotely by something. And there was this other thing which happened the last couple of weeks ago, the Tom DeLonge thing, the To the Stars Academy. I don't know if you've heard much about this. I posted a bit on Facebook. Tom DeLonge is like the sort of the latest version of Stephen Greer, and he claims to have gathered around him deep insiders that are going to disclose stuff about the UFO issue. And he had this live stream event about just over a week ago, I think it was, and he said that they're going to disclose stuff, and he had this 40-minute presentation, and I watched this 40-minute presentation. And I think two of these people in the CIA, or retired from the CIA, another one's either in the NSA or the NRO. And if you listen to, another good tip for people who might be listening to this is, if you want to know what somebody is actually saying in an interview or something, do a transcript. Sit down, Windows Media Player and a mouse, stop and start. It takes a long time. Sit down, stop and start, and type out what they're actually saying, or write it down if you're handwriting. Then you'll know what they're actually saying. Right? And if you do that with this Tom DeLonge thing, for example, there's no new information in it. There's nothing. There's no disclosures. There's one disclosure in that 40-minute presentation, and that was from Tom DeLonge saying that the psychic spy program set up by Howard Puthoff is still in operation to this day. He actually said that in the interview. What I thought of that was this idea about remotely influencing people. And think of that film Inception with what's his face,
Leonardo
DiCaprio. That was about 5 years ago. That whole film is about some group of agents or something. They go into some type of dream state or out of body state, and their job is to implant ideas into other people's brains to influence political outcomes.
I mean, they say like with films, it's almost there in plain sight. They do kind of like, like teasing you, isn't it?
Spoon feeding people.
But obviously it's made in a way where it's fiction. People view it purely as fiction, and I mean they'll scoff if you say they've got this technology already.
And if you listen to Carl James, who lives in Litchfield, he's written quite a lot about how basically, particularly science fiction films in this case, because he and I have a strong interest in science fiction films, and they have been used by the CIA to implant ideas and perceptions in people's minds. And they've had CIA people on the set of some of these films, like all these superhero films that have been coming out in the last sort of 5-10 years. Most of them are made with the agreement of the Pentagon. The Pentagon will review the script before the film comes out.
See, a lot of people know that, do they?
They don't know that. And so this is when you start to realise this and know this and find out from the connections. This is where you begin to break out of the mainstream. I don't watch movies anymore, really. I very rarely watch, unless it's old stuff. And I don't watch news. I don't listen to news. I just don't listen to it because I don't want to have their ideas and thoughts in my head. The things that they think I should be thinking about, like cancer, terrorism, climate change, financial crash, NHS. I don't want to be thinking about those things anymore. I'm just no, I don't want to think about those. I'll only think about those when it becomes absolutely necessary, and I'll try and do it my own way. Thank you very much. I'll go to my local hospital, or whatever it is, and see what things are like there. If I get treated, and I need to get treated, fantastic. If I don't, then I'll complain to somebody, but I'm not going to listen to all this stuff, you know, that you're putting out because, frankly, I don't trust you anymore. You know.
And this is the thing. I mean, we're conditioned to think that anything in authority is speaking the truth, and they're credible. So, you know, and anyone outside that isn't. We're really flip it over a little bit. You know, it's a bit. I mean, with the 9/11 thing, I know with a lot of people are a little bit awake. But I find that most people they'll know about, you know, there's something about the towers going down that's wrong, and they'll have that belief, but they won't go any further. There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
I think the mainstream. I'm sure you remember a few years ago. I know BBC did a couple of programmes about the conspiracy. Channel 4 did one, and I think that was to get those people on the fence back on side.
It was, You know, perception management. Perception management at its finest.
They look, you know, they try to look. Oh, yeah, we're looking at this, you know, really. You know, but really, they were getting those people. I think the majority of people who think that 9/11 is a bit strange, there's something all about it, but don't know really what. They're not really investigated it. Stop them investigating anymore. Bring them on side.
Exactly.
I think what these programs do is to get that majority of people.
That's right. And I think going on from that a little bit, you know, one thing we haven't touched on is motive.
Yes.
Because the other big thing what we've just described is that people say, okay, so the towers were destroyed with an energy weapon. Let's just say you're right. You know, you want to sort of bring a sensible conversation with somebody, and then they'll just say, well, why? Why did they do that? Why did they lie about it? You know, that's a real big problem for people because, I think that some of that at least comes from the way that stories are written and movies are written. You know, there's always a motive, like, you know, in the James Bond films, it's Blofeld and Spectre and all of this, you know. And so they start looking for that motive, and that is a really big obstacle to them actually looking at they've got to start with the motive first and jump to the answer. Say, okay, so you're right, the towers are destroyed, so why? And that becomes a lot harder to answer that question sensibly. Because it's so complicated. You know, why did they meaningfully kill these people? Why did they lie about it? You know, why do they keep free energy covered up when there's all these things about environmental movements and you know, and carbon dioxide? What if people say to me, you know, well, so if we've got this technology that doesn't produce any carbon dioxide, and when you run your car or whatever, or you know, flying saucer, why aren't we using them? And people can't see that. My very quick answer to that, without going into the detail, is that it's important to somebody, not sure exactly who, that our consciousness is controlled and it is kept in a certain place. Now, I can give possible reasons why I think that is the case, but that is the end result. And then people talk about the depopulation agenda, you know, because the Georgia Guidestones and stuff like that, you know, which is where they go to this Georgia Guidestones, and it says you should keep the population of the planet below 500 million, which is really weird. And some people think, oh yeah, this is what vaccinations are for. You know, they're going to vaccinate everybody, and everyone's not going to be able to reproduce, and everyone's going to die in the next 100 years, or half the population is going to die. Or they're going to set off a tsunami that wipes out the east coast of America. Or they're going to, you know, send in an asteroid to wipe out half the planet. Or they're going to, you know, release bacteriological warfare on everybody. Whatever it is. But I've been hearing this for like 10 years, and it hasn't happened. So there is something about them needing a certain population of relatively ignorant people to do something. And people have suggested that they needed to have an infrastructure built across the planet, cities, communications, transport. They're using that for something other than what is obvious to us. So I've come to the conclusion, and this is my own, I'm not the first to do it, basically, that we are being used as some type of cattle. I don't mean in the sense of cattle like we use cattle to get milk and meat. I think somebody is using our spiritual energy somehow. We're some type, and this is David Icke said as much in some of his books, I think. But I think there's something going on with that. Either that, or it's just the other analogy I make is, for example, you know, I've used this sort of clumsy analogy of the plains of Africa. where you have gazelles hopping about, eating grass, not doing anybody any harm, just living their lives, eating grass, having a nice time. And then the lions and tigers, lions primarily, they hunt them and they eat them. Now, when we watch that spectacle as human beings, we watch the lions, chasing the gazelles, they were absolutely terrified and eating them and biting their legs off and things. We think that's really horrible, it's really gruesome for us to watch, and we think, why can't those lions do something, a bit less savage? But it's just nature, isn't it? It's just how they live their lives. They've got to eat, they've got to survive, they've got to reproduce. So, but from the gazelle's point of view, it's pretty horrible for them. It's the worst thing that can happen to them. So, but that's just the natural order of things. Man hasn't created the situation with the lions and the gazelles. And you can pick anything really. I'm just picking that because it's something that came to mind. So, if you take the universe as a natural system, and you have this natural process of predator and prey going on throughout the universe, it may not necessarily just be operating at the physical level. It may be operating at a level of consciousness as well, and spiritual energy, so to speak. So that it's possible, and again, I'm not the first to suggest it, I'm just sort of maybe saying it a slightly different way to people like David Icke and probably one or two other people, that we are being preyed upon spiritually. And all that people like you and I are doing is pointing out that something like this is going on. And if we take the gazelle analogy, we're as gazelles, where the gazelle's saying, look, you want to watch it here because this is where the lions are, and these lions can come out and get you. So if you're smart and you go down this little channel here, you'll be able to get away from them, so you'll live longer, or you'll have a more comfortable life. They won't get you. And that's kind of what we're doing. Is we're like the gazelles that are perhaps a bit kind of not older, but we've seen certain things and studied what the lions are doing, and we're trying to tell the other gazelles that not to do certain, not necessarily not to do certain things, but to watch out for certain things and look for certain things and think about certain things. Most of them are saying, "Oh, I can get lost, all right. There's no lions, They're not going to do it." I've heard about them in books, but those lions are not real, and then one day, they come out, So that's kind of what I think is going on. It's something like that. It's a very sort of simplistic analogy.